This is Mark Livesey, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Someone tell me where the Humane Society of the United States has ever bought 1 acre of habitat, where they have ever funded one project that got rid of invasive weed species, where they've ever funded one project that got rid of the Asian carp in the Illinois River. I mean,
none of it.
Pick whatever it is. They've got net assets in the hundreds of millions, and they've never done anything.
I did this whole series of posts of the hierarchy of dead animals on Instagram, on social media. So I had like a picture of chicken. No one cares. Like dead, chicken meat. A picture of chicken. A picture of fish, like cut up fish. No one cares. A picture of an actual fish. Still, no one seems to give a picture of a dead turkey. No one seemed to care. It seemed like But then I showed bear meat. And I showed some bear meat that was just in a bag. What about that? And I'm like, now we're getting weird, right? Well, it's just meat, but it says bear on it. This is bear meat.
Yeah.
We care about wildlife. We care about landscapes. We care about all the things that are necessary for conservation. We'll tax ourselves 11%.
But if I showed an actual bear, like we posted some pictures of he's taking me bear hunting, actual bears that I've killed. Gee, I've never had anything in my life where people get mad at me more.
Anytime that Binos moving, you're not effective.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do when you're gridding is you at some point you're moving the Bino, but you're moving it
just to the next spot,
and then your eye is almost walking a different grid inside that field of view.
Really having a system, and I like to think about it kind of going, and we touched on this earlier, going big to small, right? You're going to spot movement by not moving.
Exactly. That's a good way to say it.
Yes, I'm playing with the optics. So, when you were up there, what did you bring for optics? Because that's the question we get daily. What'd you run?
For POW,
so for that hunt.
Well, I noticed when I started toting a rifle around in a unit where there's some big deer that the optic made that I wanted a higher quality optic than what I used to. Like I'm running that Viper in the past. Now I want that Razor because it makes a difference. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We're at the Western Hunt Expo. And we're here with Vortex Optics. We got Mark Boardman and Paul
Neess.
Neess.
Yeah, it catches a lot of people, so don't feel bad.
I was going to say I would have pronounced that incorrect. And I think
everybody does.
Before.
That's why I figured I'd jump in and save you. So.
It's like nephew Neess, just like that.
Yep, easy.
Got it. Yeah, that makes it easier, but it's not spelled like that.
It is. Yeah, EES. Yeah,
but not niece like my niece at home.
Yeah, right. No, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I've heard everything from Nessie to anything you can think of. But so
the elusive Nessie.
Yeah.
There you go.
Riding, with Bigfoot on top. So for people listening that don't know, what are your positions at Vortex?
So I'm the marketing manager, so I handle predominantly, marketing related, media relations, a lot of sponsorships, everything down to, and a lot of it's a collaborative effort, but do a lot of copywriting, catalog copy, web copy, and then work with the social team as well. So,
yeah, and I do a little bit of the same stuff Mark does, but probably a bigger portion of it is around product development stuff, coming up with new ideas, working with new products, getting them out, getting them tested. So,
how much did you have to do with the new Rangefinding?
Some. That was a collaborative effort. There were a bunch of us. That's been probably the most requested product that we've had out for, at least 6-8 years probably. So it's kind of been a long time coming, but a lot of people involved in that one.
Gotcha. Cool. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Mark, you went to Prince of Wales Island this year.
I did,
and hunted the island. And was that how many times have you been there? Is that your first?
So, it was my first and second. So I've planned, over the last probably 15 years, I've always wanted to get to the island and chase deer around. And then finally, a good buddy of mine up there, Jesse Knock, was like, dude, you need to come up here and we'll go chase deer in the Alpine. I was like, you know what? I'm in. So we went up there and did it.
That's cool.
Like phenomenally amazing, full Alaska experience hunt with, kind of all the trials that generally go along with it.
Jesse's cool. I follow Jesse on social media. We email each other every now and then because I like where he lives.
Yes.
I like to hunt up there. And What, did he fall off a cliff? What was the accident exactly?
So, man, yeah, that was the year
that messed
before.
Him up.
Yeah, man, that was a pretty big fall. He was lucky to get away from it, as good as, I mean, he definitely had some injuries, but yeah, he
literally needed a toothbrush when he got done. I think it knocked most of his teeth out.
Most of his front teeth.
How many of those teeth came out?
I think about 4. But he was hunting deer, just outside of Ketchikan and killed a buck in a spot. And of course, now I'm telling his story. But yeah, so he was hunting deer up in the Alpine, and as the story was told to me, spotted some bucks, bedded, couldn't exactly figure out a way to get on them. Kind of went up, kind of gave up on it, and looked back down and thought he could make it down this chute to get access if he actually killed one, and killed it, and then went back down. And then as he was cutting across a little bit of a face, the earth gave way out from underneath him, and he didn't have anything below him, and went off a cliff, woke up in a creek covered in blood, knocked most of his front teeth out. I think he broke part of his skull, and was able to make it out and get some help and get down the mountain. But pretty sketchy for
sure.
Those
Facebook posts, where you see him in the hospital, he looked like a wreck.
Yeah,
he looked like he fell off a cliff.
So yeah, and we had that hunt together planned at that time. I'm like, well, hey, why don't we avoid some of those spots if we can?
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. But he looked bad. Yeah.
So this year you went down there with Jesse.
Yeah.
And how was it?
It was cool, man. It was, some of the most breathtaking, amazing country you can be in. We bombed into a lake and then hiked up into the Alpine. But man, I'd say that trip, was defined by fog, rain, and bears. I mean, we got up, probably hiked for about maybe 4 hours ish. And we actually kind of broke out into the subalpine just to where you could, see a little bit.
Yeah.
And glassed up a bear in like 5 seconds. You're like, oh, okay, cool. There's a lot of bears up here, not to be unexpected.
Right.
And literally, like, I thought I spotted a buck bedded up there. And by the time I reached into my pack, got my spotting scope, got it on the tripod, weather socked in. You couldn't see 20 feet. Started to pound rain. We waited out for probably about a half hour. Like, this isn't changing. So we made camp. Next morning, it was still pretty foggy, but you could move. Made it up to the Alpine. And it was like an instant replay, man. Weather came in, couldn't see anything. So we just finished making camp and look up about 100 yards, and here's a big bear just sitting on its butt looking down at us. So we're like, oh, that's good. Let's get in our tents. So we kind of yelled at him, scared him off, and then got in our tents and spent, almost another 24 until the next morning. But we had good weather the next day. So
that's been my experience on Prince of Wales Island, which is why Aaron probably will never hunt there.
Not a fan of the rain too much.
But when I went there, I tell people all the time, if they're going to hunt POW or Ketchikan or Southeast Alaska at all, you really should go for a minimum of 10 days, and 14's even better because you don't know. I mean, it could be sunny the whole time. I've been there for 12 days straight, and it's just like the Bahamas.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
I was up there 2 years ago, same hunt. Gorgeous weather. Went up piles of rain gear, stacks of stuff. Never used any of it. Sun was out.
I've gone another time where it rained like 7 days in a row. Like it was the flood. It was just, it never stopped.
Yep.
And we were just socked in. You couldn't see. I mean, I don't mind the rain, but you can't you don't have visibility.
No, you don't. And when you get up, I mean, that country, I mean, you talk about Jesse falling up there. I mean, you don't really, in my opinion, and there's a lot of guys that have a lot more experience up there than I do, but I don't think it's a good idea to move around too much when you can't see up there.
Yeah. I had a different pair of binoculars at the time, and they fogged up like crazy.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
so
if there's a place where that's going to happen, that's one of them.
I use Vortex. Sweet. They work. They get the job done. Tell me some more about your new product that you got here, and did you use that when you were up there?
So I didn't have these at the time,
no.
But they definitely would have been cool.
When did they come out?
I mean, so they actually haven't started shipping to dealers yet, so this is kind of a final proto, but I think, of course.
We did some testing through the fall. Probably I got to run those on a
That's true.
coos deer hunt in early December. And a couple of the other guys had them out here and there on different projects, and we, of course, did a lot of field testing around the shop and back there in southern Wisconsin too. But run really well. They haven't been up to Alaska yet, so that'll be a test for someone to get up there.
Aaron?
Yes, I'm playing with the optics. So, when you were up there, what did you bring for optics? Because that's the question we get daily. What'd you run?
So,
POW,
so for that hunt, for a rifle scope, I ran our new Razor HD LH 1.5 to 8, which was awesome. I mean, it's just a super light, optically top tier, rifle scope, and then I put that on top of Kimber Montana 308. So definitely it was lightweight, very accurate, mountain setup.
Because you're not really getting long range options out there.
I mean, you definitely could have. You definitely could have. You
could shoot 1,000 yards.
You could. But the buck I ended up shooting was right at 200.
I was going to say that there were a few places where I could get 1,000-yard opportunity.
Yep.
Up in the top alpine areas, meadows, but
yep.
I mean, most of it's 200 yards, 300 tops.
Were you running spotter and a tripod, spotter and binoculars, or binoculars on a tripod, or?
So I ran mostly. I had that, like I said, that LH 1.5 to 8 on the rifle. I had a set of 10x42 Razor HDs on my chest, and then the 65 millimeter, the new 65 millimeter Razor HD spotter on a tripod.
Now, are you a big optic guy, or do you?
Yeah,
I always carry a giant glass,
you may not remember it. My background is sheep hunting. That's where I come from, and so what got me into optics to begin with was that experience sheep hunting and using stuff and just needing and knowing optics to do that.
I hope that guy's not mad at you, Mark, because I'm going to have to focus to help you.
Have to save him.
Yeah, that's I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up, just because I've noticed. With most sheep guys, I mean, we go in sometimes 10s, 15s, and an 85. And we'll run the 15s and we'll pan everywhere. And then once we start really picking things apart, or what I call where you're really gridding it out, we'll start gridding it out with the spotter. Of course, that is a lot of weight to carry in, it does save you a lot of miles walking. So on about the 5th mile in, I'm thinking, why am I packing 15s and a spotter and 10s? And a camera?
Until you sit down and start glassing, and then you're like, that's why.
It is hard for me not to take big glass everywhere.
And every hunt's a little different. Every one of them is a little bit unique in that regard.
On his hunt in Colorado, I don't know how much amount of pounds of glass we had, but we all had probably 2 sets of binoculars, and we all had a spotter. There was no sharing.
I don't know how people seriously, I don't know how people can, after hunting with good optics and having a spotter, especially out west, maybe not so much in Alabama.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know how guys hunt out west without a spotter. It's such a critical piece of gear. Plus, it just changes the quality of the hunt. I think Aaron actually probably likes the glass more than just about anybody I know.
Yep. As much ADD as I have, I can sit for 14 hours straight.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I can entertain myself for an entire day watching.
Isn't that crazy? I was the same way on this trip as I was using, what I have, the 85.
Yeah. Yeah, the 85.
The new one, your new 85 millimeter spotter, and
that didn't fall off a cliff. The 10s did.
So the 10s. That's another story we should get into. But
they did make it.
They fell off 3 times, but one time they took a real long tumble, and that first hit bent a few things.
Yeah, the first hit was a direct kill no capture impact right on the Eyecup, and that was it. You still using them now?
So they're the Razor 10x42,
right?
And they took a serious beating, and I'm still using them because they're rock solid, dude.
Testament to the durability.
Yeah, for real,
right?
Absolutely. That's what
you don't have to worry
hear.
about the Eyecup falling out because it's pretty much locked in now.
It's a non-adjustable.
It is a little bit stuck, but I never shrink them down anyway. I always have them out. Where Aaron Aaron doesn't do the Eyecups all the way out. They're always flat.
Yeah, same way with me. I've always got them turned in.
I don't
know
understand
that. Like
sheep hunter thing, because of the field of view is bigger.
It's field of view. Yeah, you typically pick up a little bit more field. You know, you when you've got the Eyecups down, you can always see completely out to the edge of the image. You get that nice, sharp, defined edge, and you kind of psychologically, you're getting it all then. When you got the Eyecups out, a lot of times it's a little fuzzy around the edge. You're seeing almost the same thing, but it's a little fuzzy out there. So psychologically, you don't quite think you're getting the whole.
It's 30 feet at 100 yards for me is what I pick up.
Really?
Because the people kept asking me, I'm like, maybe it is mental. So I just tested it. I mean, it's easy to do at 100. I mean, and I locked it on the edge of a building, went over and measured it. I gained almost 30 feet, just under. But for me now, when I pick up, and I have the Eyecups out, I feel like I'm looking through a pinhole, which you're not. It's just when, and the eyes, I'm probably inbred. My eyes are sunk to the back of my head too far. I don't need the eye relief or whatever, but I can't do it.
I grab Aaron's and I can't see. I'm trying to look through it, and I'm
you're holding them way out in front of
I'm
your
like
face,
doing this, and I can't work them. Is it just because where our eyes sit? Or?
I was going to say, I think it's just, each individual is going to find that optimal, comfortable where they feel they're getting that sight picture. And like you said, I think facial structures come into play there. Like I know for myself, like I'm like one click out. I'll either have them in or maybe one click out.
I think a lot of it's what you get started with, and when I truly learned how to glass was from a sheep hunter. When I say learned how, anybody can pick up optics, but truly learned how to grid.
Yeah.
It would be like to say I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I used my dad's best friend's fishing pole. He was left-handed. So when you watch me now, I cast right and I reel left, completely ass backwards of how you should, because that's what I had. Anybody looks at that and tries to do it, they're all discombobulated. Well, I got used to using those Eyecups in. I thought that was right. Yeah. And so I learned, it's completely opposite. So I would say if you did it for a month, you'd probably get used to it. But it is weird.
I'd have to mess around with that.
I'll just jump in on that casting thing because I'm right-handed. I cast right-handed, but I love a left-hand crank.
Yeah.
So I'm right there. I don't understand. Now we're jumping all around, but why wouldn't you want to fight a fish with your dominant hand, with your strong side?
Later on, especially
this can do the small stuff.
Steelhead and rainbows.
Yep.
Yeah, but fly fishing when you're stripping left, it's backwards.
I don't know.
No way.
I agree.
Well, no, the reel where the reel is, it's backwards when you do it the way that I'm used to.
I also snowboard goofy foot. It just feels right, but I'm right-handed.
Who knows? There were cones. Look at that. The great Ryan Avery. He made it off the mountain. When we got to the top of the mountain this morning, I got a text, and it said, can you bring the flag back down to me? Because we were supposed to stop the flag.
Okay, right?
Yeah, so, literally, he's like, can you bring it back down to me instead of me making it to the flag?
What a sissy.
But, so, optically or whatever, you guys, it's new stuff, rangefinding binocular.
Yep.
Now, which is not new anymore, we're using the new spotting scope. But what else? Because we didn't get a lot. You got a lot of tactical type things that we don't use because I'm not kicking down doors anymore. So what else do you guys have?
There were two other sort of big items for 2017, and one was a redo of the PST rifle scope series, which has been a very, very popular. As you said, Aaron, they're kind of a tactical model, taller turrets made for guys that are dialing, fairly sophisticated reticles. That choice of guys can go either MOA or mil radian on their preference. Hugely popular line of scopes for us. And so 2017, they finally got a complete redo, brand new optical system, all new scopes, new turrets, much nicer. I mean, pretty much improved all the way around. That was huge. The Fury Laser Bino was huge. And then one other big intro for us this year was a brand new, again, kind of in that tactical military LE format, a small, compact, very heavy-duty holographic style sight, which is brand new for us. We've never done a truly holographic sight. So,
and those are nice when you're
very, very fast. Quick, both
very
eyes
fast.
open. That reticle seems to kind of float out way in front of you.
I don't think people realize, well, unless they've done it, target acquisition with a true, I would have to say it's triple, quadruple for target acquisition faster, especially if you were clearing in here, if you're clearing this out. Yeah. And it's hard when both eyes aren't open to, not to go back into enemy friendly. It's difficult. I mean, and with that, with both eyes open, and as easy it is to acquire, you definitely, it gives you an edge for sure.
Yeah.
So.
With those PSTs, though, I think, even though they have, a lot of, quote, tactical features, historically the Viper PST series, the original ones, they've had a ton of crossover into, the Western hunting market, with the rise in interest of, extending your effective range, being able to take longer range shots, if you get in a cross canyon situation or something like that. And historically, the Viper PST series has held that sweet spot of price, features, and performance. You're just
Very
getting a
much
lot of rifle scope and a lot of
Right.
performance for each dollar spent. And so the Gen 2 series that we introduced this year is really just an elevation of all those. It's almost the same features, but just elevated. And one of the new big features with the new series is the integration of the RZR zero stop. So now you're gonna have a hard stop at zero.
Frank loves it. You sent me one, and he stole it out of my office, basically, and put it on his Predator gun. Frank's
naturally.
Well, since I'm not a gun guy, I'm not as quick to put a rifle scope on a gun as I am an archery sight on a bow, because I don't put the rifle sight on the gun until later. So it magically disappeared, and Frank was like, "Hey, I grabbed that scope. Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Well, and he's like, "Well, it's already mounted and sighted in." So, but he loves it for predators.
Absolutely.
Well, he's usually got an AR up close, and when they won't come in, he'll grab that for tapping them way out there. And that was the big thing he said was he had the original, and it didn't have the zero stop.
Mm-hmm.
You had to shim it out.
Right.
Where this one which is super handy on the fly, right? You can zero it out and dial it back in. And with predators, and when you're not paying attention, because predators aren't as I wouldn't say they aren't as important, but you don't generally pay attention as much. When I've predator hunted with guys, you get a lot of talking back and forth and everything between sets, and a lot of times you'll forget until the moment of truth to zero it out. He said that was a huge benefit because he could zero and dial back in. Because a lot of times when they hang up way out there, they're crisscrossing in front of you, parallel, trying to figure out what's going on. And he's really liked that thing. I've only, Spirit up full candor. Now your Razor, your Gen 2 Razor, I've shot a lot of rounds through that on my big gun.
Okay, right.
But on that, since he stole it, I probably got to shoot 10 times. But the way that thing is set up as far as crossover, you're right. To me, I would say, oh, that's a hunting scope. It's not, but tactical guys use it all the time, so I wouldn't see an issue with either one.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bridging between those two things. People want to be able to dial elevation. You want to have that zero stop. You want to have enough travel to dial those longer range shots. It's got an illuminated reticle where the illumination's integrated into the left side of the parallax, so it's super clean, easy to access from the shooting position.
You just gave a bunch of archers headaches. Parallax?
I know,
What's parallax? Lay it on us.
Paul?
It's like Brian and I would.
Seriously.
About a half an hour here.
Yeah.
Well, it's basically what happens. You see it in a rifle scope. It's the way a shooter would see it is if you were down behind a scope and you're looking through at a target, and if you moved your head off center a little bit, the visual indicator is the reticle moves on the target. It doesn't appear to sit visually in the same exact spot. And you can see it, if you're a shooter and you're seeing that phenomenon. The bad thing is, depending on where your eye is placed, you're going to hit in a different spot on that target.
Right.
And it relates to it's due to the way this things lay out inside the scope. And so there are optical planes inside the scope. The reticle has to lay exactly on one of those optical planes to remove parallax. And it's a long topic. I'll spare you the details here, but it's basically tuned out when you have a rifle scope with a side focus. When you're tuning that side focus, you're adjusting the focal length inside the scope. And essentially what will happen is you'll put the focal planes together with the reticle, and when they overlap each other, there's no parallax.
Gotcha. No, what I was having you do is save 100 people email me so I don't have to explain it. Because anytime, especially when you get in long range shooting, it is a new phenomenon.
It is very popular.
And it is very easy to not. A lot of people nowadays seem to skip from A to Y.
Or they'll just jump right into long range shooting without much background in any other type of shooting.
Right. Where, like, knowing what that is, they don't, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean it's like important that you anchor to the same spot, kind of like
it helps.
with a bow?
It's
so
similar
your peep
idea.
and everything lines up the same.
You know, and that's one of the ideas, like setting up a rifle properly with the right stock and the right cheek riser and so forth. So you are getting a good, consistent cheek weld every time.
Yeah.
You know, that helps. It's exactly the same thing.
Especially when you're. I don't think it matters as much at 300, let's say, or even 5. It's
less
not
critical.
Yeah, less critical. But when you've got American snipers all over the planet now, 1,000. It's like really. You don't have to be a very good shot to hit anything with a compound at 20. Even 40 is not that bad. 60 is getting a little rough. 80, you're going to be missing some targets. No different. You talk about 200 to 4 to 6 to 8. Yeah. Everything, the farther you go, becomes critical that you are doing the same thing every time, all the time. And that's when you talk the rise of the cheek piece, for example. Even the stroke or the length of the buttstock. People don't understand. You put Greg Poole. He's 6'8" or 6'7", whatever the hell Greg is, or a tall guy on a gun that's built for you. He's not going to be reacquiring the same time because he's bunched up. He doesn't fit.
Yeah, he's cranking his neck back. He's stretching back.
Yeah, it's not good. So as far as which I know you guys probably can't talk about a lot, you guys seem to be really coming at things hard as far as new products and everything else. Is there anything you guys want to talk about that's coming down the pipe that you can, or is that all top secret?
Most of that stuff stays pretty top secret. I can tell you, we've done a really good job about being very, very quick in new products, coming out with exciting stuff every year, and and I can tell you, I don't see that changing over the next several years.
No.
I of course know pretty much what's coming out next year. There's some really neat stuff that's going to show up. I don't think people are going to be disappointed if that helps you out at all.
No,
and we stay pretty tight-lipped about some of the details.
Well, and Brian, we haven't had a chance to actually use these, so I called you, a week ago? I call you all the time, but I called you a week ago about these because guys were asking, and guys had said, hey, I heard the glass isn't as good as the razors in the, in these, and then the Furies, right?
Furies,
yeah, in the Furies. And so I assume they're probably Vipers. Now, the biggest thing I would stress to people is your Razor HDs, what are they, $1,400 or something?
Like
roughly?
10 by 42 is probably going to retail for right about 12.
Okay, yeah, so pretty close. And then competitors' Rangefinding binoculars are 28 to 33, I think, something like that.
In that vicinity.
These are 11 something.
1,200.
1,200.
Those are going to retail for right about.
And 1,200 is not exactly like buying a candy bar, right? It's not cheap, but most people
can do
1,200.
When it comes to optics, that's
and then of course you add that up. You take let's say the price of a small pocket rangefinder is high $300 range.
I was going to say 3 to 5. Yep.
You bring that off of that now, and now you're kind of right down in that Viper binocular price range. And of course, now the guy, what everyone has asked us for years is they've rolled two products into one, and they're carrying one single product around. That's sort of what everybody's been looking for.
And this is only a 3-ounce increase from the 10 by 42. Right. I went through the specs. It is archer friendly, which is nice. It goes close range. The thing, you don't really notice. I don't really notice. A lot of bow hunters aren't sitting behind glass for 14 hours a day unless they're high country mule deer hunters. Most like elk hunters or whatever. I mean, some guys don't even bring optics when they elk hunt, right? I can't. I'm not capable of doing that.
Couldn't do it.
But, I mean, Viper glass is pretty good glass. It's really good glass for the money. And then you have that rangefinder in there. The one thing, I don't know how many times bring up the binos and you can, something's coming in. You see the tines. You're putting the binos back in your chest harness. Now you're grabbing. For me, since I've donated my entire life and money into hunting, the money isn't as big of a thing for me. It's the fact that you're probably going to kill more when you have one system.
It makes that process quicker, yeah.
You're getting some advantages there, like Paul touched on. I mean, you got that dual purpose functionality, right? So, I mean, you guys, you're going in the mountains, you're shaving, an item, you're saving some time, potentially.
I can tell you, guiding, it saves a ton of time. I don't know how many guys have wanted to slap in the back of the head where you range and then you glass and it moves. And they're getting ready, and I'm like, and they don't know. I'm like, it just moved 80 yards. And that at a far distance, I'm like, slap, stop, because then you have to rearrange
Right.
and you have to
Readjust,
or hold
yeah.
over or whatever.
Yep.
That's huge. And when you're doing this, which I'm always doing, when I without these,
Yeah.
it becomes a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's another really good point. As an outfitter or a guide, and you
or
have
just
a
your
client,
buddy, you're calling ranges for him.
exactly.
And it keeps moving.
And you talk about potentially with the compound taking a longer shot, or like I said, with the increasing popularity of taking a longer range shot with a rifle, being able to call those ranges real time. So your shooting partner, hunting partner can dial elevation or make that adjustment, but then you're not switching back and forth. So you're also able to spot for impacts, call shots, you can call wind. You can do a lot of things.
This year, so often the shots were like, you've got a moment, take it or don't, and it's just like, well, you can't afford sometimes to have the luxury. Sometimes you do, right? It's just camping over there. But
sure.
But a lot of times, it seems like more often than not, we were like under the gun to get it done.
Yeah.
The one buck was
moving.
Assholes and elbows were flying around trying to get the gun set up, getting it ranged and everything else. But the one thing too, I was just checking, this does have the mount to adapt these to a tripod.
Yeah, I just saw you unscrewing that over there, and that does. Yeah, guys can remove that screw. You can put a standard Bino adapter in there. And that's, on these lasers, there's actually two advantages to that. Number one is, you guys know, you run a Bino on a tripod, you're immediately going to see about 30% more detail out of it.
You can range a lot farther.
Yes.
And you're also going to range further. Yeah, if you're trying to hit very small, difficult targets, putting that thing on a tripod is going to up that ability to get a reading.
I've duct taped, which is redneck as hell, electrical taped your rangefinder to the side of my basically my tripod leg, more my vertical post, just to be able to range.
Yeah. Oh, it helps.
And
I
don't think people, you get past, and I can't say for these, but you get past 800 to 1200, especially on foggy days. Any bad lighting, super bright lightings especially seems to screw it up. Ranging something at 1,200 yards is difficult at certain times, and even farther is much worse. So once they're on the tripod, the other thing is, too, you're actually looking at what you're ranging. It isn't overly easy to pick up a brown deer in the set of brown rocks, with brown dirt, to drop the binos or take your head away and then range and then pick it back up. Mm-hmm. It is nice to.
Yeah, and typically, when you're looking at handheld laser rangefinders, they're usually typically they're 6 or 7x magnification on those things.
Yep.
They're very small oculars. You've usually got a pretty narrow field of view. So here, you've got guys got extra magnification to work with, plus, in conjunction with a wider field of view. So yeah, it makes that a lot easier.
Yeah. These aren't very heavy. 32 ounces, 31. Is that what they were?
Yeah.
We talked about the other day.
I know, I'm trying to
I think
think.
it was 28.5 for the 10x42 Razor HDs. The 10x42s in these were 31.5 or 30.5
something in
ounces, which is not overly heavy, which is amazing. So with what, like, for how long, I don't even know you guys talk about, how long have you worked on these? You mentioned it earlier, but exactly, like, from the moment of thought, let's do this.
And typically, of course, it depends on whether you're working on a really basic project, like, perhaps some sort of tripod accessory or a laser bino or rifle scope. But on something like that, a development cycle might run over a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's not unusual at all.
Well, I know on the backpack portion of things with Kafaru, we just came out with this native. It's basically a camelback, right? Water bladder holder. Yeah, that took, I don't know, 2 weeks, right? Screw it up.
It's relative to what you're doing.
Then you go to a frame, that could be 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
and like the technology that comprises a laser, the laser rangefinder, it's not rocket science. Guys have been building laser rangefinders for a long time, and the same with binoculars. There's no, that's pretty cut and dried right now. But that process of melding them together, putting them in the same package, getting the bulk down, shrinking the housing, that's where the
maintaining the optical quality,
the difficulty comes in. And there is a guy gives up a little bit on these. When you're running a laser, that laser comes back through the lens system of that binocular.
Yeah.
And so they have to run a coating in there to deflect that laser down to the receiving lens inside. So you do, there's a little. It's not a free lunch. There's a little bit of a trade-off in there. And you talk to Aaron about guys asking you about that bino, and what I tell guys, if you're doing the level of glassing where you're sitting high, you're tripod mounting, you're looking at something a mile away or more, and you're doing it all day long, that's a guy. I'd probably tell that guy to go buy a Razor Bino. There's a point there where it's a little more effective to spend your money on a little better optic when you're at that level.
Yeah.
But you kind of hit it with the typical guys out archery, elk hunting, deer hunting, rifle deer hunting. For a huge chunk of our customers, that thing it fits the need.
I would think 80-90%.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that vicinity.
I was going to say, prior to this year, I really didn't hunt in an area where I could chase a 190, 200-inch mule deer. And any mule deer with a bow, especially for archery, I'm happy with. Like, a big buck is a big buck. I don't need.
You know pretty quick if it's one you're going to shoot. Doesn't
right,
take
like
you a whole long
I
time
don't
to make
need
that
like
call,
some fancy optic. But I noticed when I started toting a rifle around in a unit where there's some big deer, that the optic made that I wanted a higher quality optic than what I used to. Like if I'm running that Viper in the past, now I want that Razor because it makes a difference. And so back years ago, I was like, hey, I'm an archery hunter. Big is big. I can see just fine.
Yep. Yes or no.
With my budget binoculars, right? Yes or no. Now, like with Aaron, where he's counting annuli on sheep, that's different. Like a guy spends $20,000 on a sheep hunt. Yeah. Now you're talking about making sure you can see what you're seeing.
Well, and we get the question a lot because guys will buy vultures, and they'll have vultures or whatever. And then, hey, should I upgrade? And I was just telling them, you'll know when you need to upgrade. Like,
sure.
Is there better glass? That's a dumb question. Yeah. I mean, you bought an optic at a price point you could afford, and there's, 4 tiers or 3 tiers above. Yeah. And they were like, well, how did you know when you were ready? And I was like, well, I was ready before I could afford it. My truck got broken into. Tools got stolen, and I didn't buy new tools. I bought optics. I said that's how I told this recently. And I said, but when you're ready, which will basically be when you can sit in glass for 4 or 5 hours, you're going to know that you want a better optic. Yeah. And at that point, once you know, you're going to know you need to start doing side jobs. You're going to do, unless you don't have a girlfriend or wife that's going to yell at you. If you do, you need to start hiding money. And then you can upgrade. Where guys that some of them are like, hey, I whitetail hunt and I have a Viper. Is it going to be worth it to get a Razor? And it's pretty easy. The Razor's better. Mm-hmm. But, are you missing anything from upgrading? Have you noticed? Most guys I know are noticing missing things, whether it be, I don't know, we tried to quantify it from the Vulture to the Viper to the Razor by time. Right, what you're losing, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a pain.
That's one way you could do it.
It's an epic pain in the ass to do that and do it accurately. But there's anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes is what you lose. Meaning, when you just start to see where your vision, where you would start to, you're basically when you have the golden hour, then you have the golden 10 minutes, and it seems like the biggest ones come out in the last 10 minutes. You get about 3 to 5 minutes of that with the Vulture. And then with the Viper, we were getting like, if you had 3 with the Vulture, because it also depended on fog and, whatever. Then you get another 2 or 3 with the Viper, and then you get the rest, with the Viper, then you get the rest with the Razor. So is 7 minutes of difference worth $1,000? That you'll know when it is, for sure. I don't know that made any sense.
But that's a pretty good way of putting it. It's a pretty good way of putting it.
Well,
what surprises me is it's kind of like is the guys that don't spend money on optics at all. Like that blows my mind. And I remember when I first had Aaron on the podcast and we talked about buying a Kafaru pack. Well, a Kafaru backpack costs you some money. You're talking about an $800 backpack. Back when I would buy a $300 one from REI. So. And Aaron broke down some reasons why, just based on where you put money in general.
Yep.
Like, why aren't we seeing this backpack in its value basically in relation to how we spend our money?
Well, God, let's hope Hoyt's not listening to this, but people buy new bows every year. Yeah. And one of my favorite bows of all time was a Hoyt Ultra Tech Vintage 2003.
Right.
I shot that bow amazing. and but people buy them every year. New one every year, and new sights every year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be very polite.
And those are expensive bows.
Yeah, they're $1,200, and guys are like, "You $780 for a backpack." I'm like, I know, right? You only wear it every day you hunt, or boots, or optics.
I was going to say, there's certain spots. I mean, boots, backpacks, optics, and probably the weapon that you're going to
And I would rather have a lower quality weapon, rifle or bow, by far than I would a lower quality optic.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is so critical. And you talk about, not to circle back to this product, but you talk about carrying multiple pieces of glass in the field. Like for me personally, like where I would see myself using this is, on a rifle mule deer hunt or a rifle coos deer hunt, where this might be my, the optic that I carry on my chest. Yeah. But then I'm going to have a set
Spotter.
a set of 12 razors, or a kaibab on my tripod, and then the spotter as well,
which I love. Aaron and I use the kaibabs a ton.
These 15s, I'm a 15 fan. But
big time.
I'm not a fan of carrying them and the Razor 85, but I do.
But we do.
we do. Plus, it's funny going in. Not talking about backpacking, but guys that go in for 5 days with 26 pounds of gear. And I'm thinking, I've got 32 in camera gear and optics. And Brian's got every bit of that in podcast because we carry the podcast gear. We as in he.
And video is a little heavier than photography.
Yeah.
More batteries.
More batteries.
More everything.
Yep. Yeah. So, you start, for me, you get to a certain point, I'm like, what the hell's 2 more pounds? Just throw it in the back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm physically able to do it, but 15s for me, especially when you're sitting there all day with, for me, anything from a mile in with 15s, I'm good. After a mile, I don't have the juice I need. I got to have a spotter to really, when I say that, I can see things at a mile, but really dissect, I got to have a spotter. But there's places, though, in Colorado where you're looking, where we 3 miles out and all the way in. And, I mean, if I'm just seeing at 3 miles brown splotches, and one brown splotch seems to be chasing all the other brown splotches, that's enough for me to get the spotter out, and that's enough for me to walk closer. So
one thing I was going to say is back to the discussion on how fun it is to glass.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Aaron and I find myself wanting to go and just scout, just sit behind binoculars on the weekends and just look at stuff to see what's out there, and
it can get pretty competitive.
Yeah, it's always. I usually lose, but here's the deal: if you're looking through a low quality glass, it's not fun. I've had a friend go. He's like, I hate this. Let's go move. Let's start walking. I'm like, and I'll get behind his glass, and I'm like,
you know why he hates it.
This is why you hate it. It's like looking through a Coke bottle. Like I can't see anything.
Yeah. Well, as I say, that's one thing with on the competitive side, not making it not a we do when we'll not that we razz each other that much, but we will see like at the end of the day, like, man, I only spotted 2 deer, $2, and that one day, like you were on fire.
I was killing it. It's so cool to sit there.
Every time you find something, you're like, it's like finding a little treasure. You're like, oh, I gotcha.
You get Snyder and John Pinch, and I'm like, deer, buck, deer.
I mean, Pinch kept looking at me because we had crushed you the day before, and he kept looking over. He's like, but I mean, the thing is,
in the zone.
You can't compete in the Indy 500, with a Prius.
Right.
You can't do it. I mean, there's no way. And I've had guys tell me, it doesn't matter. I've got good eyes. And I'm like, it helps. It helps to have good eyes. But, okay, in the perfect conditions and the perfect light and everything else, it may not be as big of a difference. But if you've got a guy holding a $100,000 sheep tag, or you've got you just paid for a $25,000 Dall sheep hunt, and you want to shoot something over 12 and a half years old, or you just don't know how to score and you have to see the rings, you can't do it by body or size of the body, it's going to be pretty damn important.
It's really, obviously Alaska, that's a huge issue. I mean, you can't be wrong on that.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, you're going to be fined. Yeah. You're going to be fined. You're going to lose your RAN.
I've got a question for you, Aaron. On this year's hunts that we went on, which hunt did you value the optics the most on?
Oh, your deer hunt.
Really?
More
Colorado?
than Alberta. Yeah, more than Alberta. I mean, in Alberta, it's important, but the thing is it's flat, and those deer are so big. From the way they walk, you could tell it was a tank.
Yeah.
I mean, before the sun come up, Lander and I, because they're like all stoved up, like, well, that's not a doe. Yeah, that's
right.
Oh, yeah.
So, but in what you saw,
No, you're right.
Well, and where
it's
we
like
were hunting, everything looks like a deer. I mean,
I was gonna say when we're in Alberta, it was like if you take a solid brown wall, and then you stick a deer of a slightly different, like gray color on that wall, they just pop. Right. But Colorado's like a camo pattern in the background: fallen logs, trees, rocks, everything's like, and then you put those deer in there, they just disappear.
Well, they disappear and they get tucked into little different pockets or spots where you might just see an ear or an eye or part of a horn, or a backline
exposed. That's why
exposed.
I felt
he had that
awesome in Alberta. I was a spot full.
That is awesome.
But seriously, then I got humbled when I went to Colorado. I'm like, I wasn't really good. It was just like they just stood out. Like,
and there's times with sheep, we'll catch the top of the crown over the top of a log or a rock.
And you catch a shine.
You can't do that shit with bad optics. It just doesn't happen. And you get headaches, too.
When I guided in Idaho, a lot of times we'd be doing some really long distance looking for rams. I mean, you'd be stretching out 7-8 miles looking sometimes. And sometimes there it's a matter, you guys know this too. It's like you're looking for patterns almost. Yeah. And we'd spot sheep by you just look, and you could see this at extreme distances like that. You'd watch for like a diagonal pattern on a talus slope, and it would be a band of rams walking away to their butts going.
Yeah.
But I mean, extreme. You're looking at objects that are they're the head of a pin inside the head of a pin in your field of view. They're just absolutely tiny.
I want to ask you a question, Paul, and then hear Aaron's response too. 2 questions. First one is, what is the biggest mistake that you think hunters make when they're glassing?
It's no question, moving too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, moving too fast and not having the patience. And that comes with time and experience doing it. I mean, you've got to have confidence that there is an animal where you're looking. If you don't have that confidence, you're gonna move too quickly. You're just gonna. And you
agree?
That's one of the big advantages running a tripod. It's gonna slow you down doing that, and the stability is gonna help you. But even on a tripod, and I've been there too. You're just in a hurry. You wanna keep looking the big country, and you just got to force yourself to slow down, be patient, come back.
Kind of like a guy like I take my buddies hunting who haven't been hunting much, and you go you start walking. They're always in a hurry to get to where the deer are or the elk, and you're like, they're right where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, you got to slow down.
We'll walk up, especially like Pinch and I, and we've been together from the territories to Tiburon Island to Colorado, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, we're going to tear this mountainside up. People don't understand what we're talking about. It basically means guaranteed if there is a raccoon or a porcupine, one of us will have found it because we won't leave that mountainside for 6 hours.
And it's a matter of having confidence in yourself, having confidence that there is an animal on that hillside, and believing that, and knowing if you sit long enough and you watch long enough, sooner or later you're going to catch something. You're going to spot them.
And I'm sure you've had this happen. We've run into hikers or hunters or where guys have been glassing in a spot and like, hey, how you doing? And they haven't seen anything, and they could have been lying. But as they're talking about, well, we've been sitting here a while, or we've watched guys glass a certain hillside for 30 minutes and we're a ways away, and then they grab their stuff, and then we glass the hillside they were, and it's like, well, if they left a gold mine because we picked 27 animals out.
Yep.
And if we find 27 animals, we're not staying for 30 minutes. We're not leaving. We're going to keep watching it. Yeah. And I think, as you said, guys give up.
Yeah, I watch that all the time. When I guided in Idaho, of course, we hunted public land. It was all national forest. Anybody could be in there. A lot of times we hunted in areas where we were right next to DIY guys in there. And I can't tell you how often you'd see that. We'd be glassing the same spots and be there, and guys would just not stick it out long enough. Yeah. And it's like.
So other than the advice of slow down, and maybe, what piece of advice would you give a guy to one thing that you would tell him to help him be a better glasser?
One of the, some guys know it. To you guys, this is going to sound like old hat, but I see a lot of guys out there that don't pay attention to this. It's using things like sun angle to your benefit. How often do you see guys, and sometimes you have to. It's just the nature of where you're at and where you can get to and where you want to look. But a lot of times you've got some discretion in where you're going to go on a morning hunt or an evening hunt. And when you're in that mode of maximizing your glassing ability, pick those locations so you've got that sun behind you, and it makes a huge difference. You guys know that. It's just stuff lights up like candles on it.
I think that's a really good point, but I think also one thing not to forget is that sun can affect where animals are going to want to bed. If you're in a hot, arid climate like Arizona, you might. Yeah. I'm never going to suggest you to glass directly into the sun, but sometime it may be a little bit less comfortable because you got a little bit of side light and it's harder to see in there. But as that sun's coming over the backside, there might be deer that are, trying to get into that shade spot because that's where they want to rest all day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I would say come up with a system. It's not a horrible. How I do it, and you dive in with what you guys think. But I grab, my handheld, my tins, and I do a quick scan. Yep. I say quick.
You're looking for the obvious.
Yeah, I'm grabbing low hanging fruit. Yep. Real fast, and it depends on what we're doing. If we're scouting or we're hunting, and I'm scanning quickly, and a lot of that time, especially in an area we're green in,
because that drives me nuts. Like I will go with a guy, and he'll start gritting like tiny little movements at a time, and I'm like, you haven't even looked. From my naked eye, I can see there's a big buck right there.
Right,
give it that once over.
That fast look.
I like that idea.
And I'll do 10 minutes, just real quick, scanning all over. Some of it's, especially if we're green in the area, you can learn a lot in that first 10 minutes of glassing light. And then I'll pop those on the tripod or the 15s, and I'll still do fairly quickly, but now I've upped the power. And I'm still grabbing some lone-hanging fruit with a little bit of grit or a little bit of method to the madness. But after that, I glass more with a spotting scope than anybody maybe not Ben. I glass with that spotter a lot, and I'm literally, gritting it. And some of that is I'm not worried if I got two other guys with me, if they beat me glassing. They may find more animals because I'm really pinholing myself, but I'm looking for the animals they're not going to see.
Sure.
Not because I'm a better glasser, but because of the optics they're using.
And you know that by using that technique, you may not be the first guy. You're not going to miss the obvious animal. When you get to that point in your pattern or grip, you're going to see it.
You'll find them
more effectively than those guys anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, and what happens is you progressively slow down, you get more and more. The guys that are just locked into moving too fast, it becomes difficult for them to slow down to that level. I mean, it's just hard to do. It takes like I said, it just takes that confidence.
I don't know what's wrong with my brain because I can't seem to slow down walking too much. But glassing,
I know.
If I get to an area that should have an animal, I won't leave it until I find it. It's like a mental game, and it could be.
It's so bizarre because when Aaron's moving, he's not very patient. But behind glass, he's like the most patient you know.
Good way to do it.
Good.
Well, and it's just so many times that I have caught the white patch of a butt of a deer or a sheep, the last 6 inch of it hanging past a rock.
Yep.
And then, and that might have been a ewe. But then pretty soon, that made me stay on that ewe, where then I'm like, oh, man, there's another ewe. And then they start feeding. But if I wouldn't have found that butt patch, I wouldn't have seen those other 15 animals. So, and not only that, too, it is it's fun for me. I just enjoy glassing.
I'm the same way. I just don't get tired of looking. It's just fun to do.
No, and I get to snack.
There you go. And you talk about that though. I mean, you're saving a lot of time. You're saving energy. You're not you hike all over the mountain. You might be pretty darn spent by the time you find a deer or get on a deer. Where with that, you're systematic. I mean, you're almost preserving your reserves. So when you do find something, you can charge at it and make a good hunt.
Absolutely.
One of the few times I've got close to conking a guy in the Nuggin. We had hiked in not far, 2.5 miles, but it was a climb, right? I mean, we were at 13,000 feet, and there was two super fit, and I hate to say the new stereotypical, but the athletic hunter came from the mountain biking background. I mean, and would have probably crushed me, right? And I get the glassing pad out. I separate out my snacks, and I got everything going. And they're like, "Is this as far as we're going?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're home. This is it." And they were depressed. They were like, "I thought we were going to walk farther." And I'm like, "Well, we're not. This is it. We're in the honey hole." "Well, can we go hike around more?" And I'm like, if you want to go hike around, go ahead, but I don't know why you would. You're going to scare off game.
Stay off the skyline while you're doing it.
Everything, yeah. We can see everything from right here. I was like, once we're here, we got 2.5 more miles to the next glassing spot, but that's probably, we're not going to go there for 2 days. They could not handle it. But again, that was like 5 miles and in glassing from where we were. And not that I'm a great trophy hunter myself. We were looking for another guy, an animal, but that's how you find those big animals. And it may be a big animal that you find in July, but you're trying to kill it in September.
You're being systematic. You're being patient. You're essentially, in my opinion, being way more effective than kind of bumbling around the mountains, like spooking game that you may have glassed up from where you were sitting and could have made a stalk, or just gone to a different point and then snuck in and found them at a different
some of those
time.
areas we hunt, you can't help but skyline yourself.
Sure.
And so for me, if I can glass everything, I'll drop back into the bottom and circle around because, you basically have the ridge line to follow, and it's such scree-infested, just horrible slopes. I'll just drop down to the bottom and circle all the way around, stay off the skyline, and then I pop back up 2 miles later where I haven't – and I don't think people realize how many animals are running away when they're skylining.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's tough, though, man. That's tough to commit to losing that elevation to come back up.
You got to be fit.
We're
stupid.
Aaron and I are both big optics people, and even in Alabama, like we were bringing our optics with us in these gents forest, tree stand setups. It keeps me entertained too. Mm-hmm. But I want to see. And a few times I saw some bucks that were off, and if I didn't have my binos, I couldn't check them out. And it's just a rewarding experience to be like, "Ooh, I got you," and you see how big it really is. And otherwise, I'd just be like, "I know it was a buck, but maybe it was a forked horn or a
and then it's just
4 point."
If you do spot a nice deer or something like that, or even just a deer, if you haven't been seeing anything, man, you're sitting all. I mean, that's a big confidence booster. That's a lot that keeps you going. That makes you want to stay in the tree. And
I hear a lot of guys when they go to Prince of Wales hunting black bear in the spring, and my buddy Chad, I took him, and I'm glassing 60 yards, because I've still hunted a lot for blacktail, and Prince of Wales is thick. It's the same. You're going down a logging road, and you can see 80 yards down this logging road. Right around the corner, and there's some brush, or there's a little timber patch that's been cleared. I've spotted so many bears with my binos that I would never have seen on foot, and they probably would have heard me or seen me before I even saw them without that. But I found that it takes extreme discipline for some guys to use their binoculars. Yeah. They carry them all day, especially when they think it's too thick or too close quarters, and they don't leverage those things, and they're a game changer.
No, in that thicker country like that, I mean, if you're patient and slow and want to use your optics, like you said, you're gonna potentially spot something. You're almost kind of looking through or into, and you're going to spot those details. Like you said, all of a sudden you put your binos up and you see that part of that rump or part, and you would not have seen it in that.
When I was hunting with Chad, he was like,
naked eye.
I'm like, "There's a bear," and he's like, "No way." Yeah, there's a bear, and that happened over and over again. He's like, "I would never have seen that bear." Because I would have just charged. I would have just thought I was being sneaky. I would have walked right into it. It would have seen me first. I never would have known it.
And unless you do that, I mean, you think you can. You think you are able to see.
Can't. Yeah, you think you're able to see, but you're not. You can't.
One of the things I've done with a couple guys to try to prove to them, which is easier, is take pennies or nickels, and only from here to the truck, 25 to 30 yards, and you set up a course. And you put those, put the pennies and the nickels sideways, or not sideways, but flat, out in a patch of trees. Which really, if you've put them up, they're there. But a true glasser or optics guy, he'll pick them all and he'll find them all. Well, that's no different than an elk body or a sheep body at 1,000 yards. But 20 yards away, and people don't realize. Well, this is a big eye-opener for them, and this is a military thing. They have us do this. But you put those pennies, nickels, whatever, pencils, lay a pencil at an angle. You have a guy that grids out correctly, and you guys should do a school on this. They grid that out correctly. There is no reason they shouldn't find every one.
Yeah.
And when guys come back and there was 25 pennies and nickels and they found 5, and I'm like, well, that's 20 sheep you missed. Okay, that's 20 mule
They're
deer.
like that, like just.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an easy way to grid, because I can be like that target identification. That left tree is your far edge, and that tree over there, that's your left far edge.
Right.
That's your right, and you're not going to go above that ribbon. Well, that's easy. That's a gimme. All right, you just take and you grid. Well, that really shows people how to grid, and then 2, they miss penny. Those are they're a gimme. I mean, that's easy. That's a hell lot easier to find than a freaking sheep.
Yeah.
So,
And the other thing, when you say grid, you're not like you move the bino and then you stare through it while it's not moving.
Right. That's a key thing you bring up. You know, it's that when you move that bino, anytime that bino's moving, you're not
toast.
effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do when you're gridding is you at some point you're moving the bino, but you're moving it.
Just
and then
to the
your
next
eye,
spot.
And then your eye is almost walking a different grid inside that field
Absolutely.
of view. Is, you know, how that,
And I'll see guys move, and they've like, I gridded that.
I've
Yeah, I've gridded
Yeah.
that.
Never
And you're
stop,
like, you've never stopped. And especially at longer distances, you're not going to see that animal move its head down. But when the bino's sitting there and you're looking through a window, and it's still stationary, you can see that critter move.
Oh yeah, you're gonna. I mean, I would say you're gonna spot movement by not moving.
Exactly.
You know,
that's a good way to say it. Yep.
Or you're just gonna see, and that Paul and I talk about tripod glassing all the time, but with your binos, and I think that's something that I think it's increasingly more popular. But man, your effectiveness is off the charts, and you talk about doing really having a system, and I like to think about it kind of going, and we touched on this earlier, going big to small, right? If you get to a spot where you're in a glass, I hit it with my naked eyes first, like you said, get that low-hanging fruit, and I like to look close right away, because I personally am gonna
might kill it right now.
You might kill it right now,
and might spook it,
and that's the animal you're most likely to spook. Exactly.
I've screwed that up a few times, glassing 1,000 yards away, and there's a deer 40 yards below me in the cliffs.
And then kind of visually, hit those those obvious spots where you think there might be something. And I also like to look as far away as I can, because you might catch that animal he's just going over the rise, and you're like, oh, I needed to look at him, and maybe we need to go over there later today. And then like I said, you big to small. Then get your chest binos out, hit those high, those high priority areas. And then, then all of a sudden get the binos on the tripod, and then get the spotting scope out.
You just mentioned a lot of things that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
We just do it naturally.
You've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
No. I have to say the deer below the camp thing, the 3 times that's happened to me where I'm glassing the pristine basin. And the one time the buck I got 18 yards from, I didn't end up getting a shot. But I'm literally 20 yards from my tent, and I've got the pad out, and I'm making noise. I got to dip in, and I'm glad. And then I just happened to look down at I just saw a gray patch, and I was like, it's looking at me. There's no telling how long it's been there. It's a 180-inch buck. He was only like 23 wide, but the thing must have been 32 tall. And I'm like, well, I don't need to sneak back, I guess, right? I'm like, crap. So I kind of just got all my stuff together and acted like a hiker. And went back, but I had already spent 30 minutes looking at deer that weren't there for a deer that was right below me. And Robbie Denning talks about that. Yeah. Look at your feet and start going out from there. And which I like glassing so much, I usually skip that foot portion, which has caught me a few times.
Well, and it's hard not to, man. You see just that huge, beautiful basin, and you just want to start, attacking it with your eyes, and you got to kind of force yourself to.
Yeah, and you can
do that.
When you can tell guys too. That really not really know how to glass, but are really gridding stuff out. When you hear guys say, "Hey, there's a marmot," oh, I got it. Yep, it's a skunk. It's a skunk, and 1,000 yards away. Yeah. You don't pick up porcupines from 1,000 yards away without solid work, and that's another thing too. You may not see a deer for 4 hours, but you see quite a bit of other animals.
That's what's fun. I mean, really, that's fun. Watching a beaver and a pond and just whatever. I don't know.
Well, and when you're doing that and you see that stuff, to me, that's always a good reinforcer. When I'm seeing little critters or little interesting things, that tells me I'm going slow enough. I'm doing a job right when you're.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I do like when it's all snow and then brown deer, or when it's all Alberta plain and they just pop out.
It's never going to hurt things.
You know where it really stood out to me was how orange those bucks are on POW. They just like,
they pop.
In the green, it's like,
they
ding,
pop.
Ding, buck.
Yeah.
It's so easy to see them. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
all right. Well, we better wrap it up.
This ended up way more interesting and informational than I thought it was going to. I thought we were just going to talk about your product, but people are actually going to learn stuff from this one, which is good.
Very good.
Yeah, that's good.
Appreciate it, guys.
No, appreciate it.
Appreciate Vortex partering with us, and it's a good.
We love chatting about this stuff.
It's good stuff.
And it's funny, you sit here and talk for heck, I don't know how long we've been here talking, and then you tangent, and there's just it's like you're like, oh my gosh, we haven't even touched half of what you could talk about, But
no, it'll be good when people talk about ask me about glassing, because rather than type up an entire article, I can be like, hey, you should go listen to this podcast. We cover it all.
That's right.
Simplifies things for us too. So
thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Stay gritty.
You too, man.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. We thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, Hoyt, Vortex, Phelps Game Calls, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowmen. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them however you can. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.